Today,
Nous sommes vraiment très heureux d'avoir été.
The agreement with India is historic. It proves Burkina Faso is not alone and can choose its partners freely. This cooperation will boost agriculture, energy, and education, while reducing dependence on old powers. If well implemented, it will bring real progress for our people and strengthen the Sal's unity.
He slipped into the meeting not as a president, but as Africa's youngest commander-in-chief, dripping with both defiance and possibility. On June 26, 2025, Ibrahim signed agreements with India and 7 other nations, real strategic partnerships, not just headlines. These deals weren't about flashy photo ops. They were about something much deeper: sovereignty, real trade, a shift in power, and one partner turned every head: India. This isn't theory or hype, it's raw, unfolding history. But why India? And what exactly did Burkina Faso just trade? It all unravels in a way that might just change how we see Africa's future. Stick around, because when we put the spotlight on what came next, you'll realize this is something bigger than politics. It's a real revolution in motion. Imagine this: a conference room buzzing with intent, cameras clicking not for applause, but for documentation. Sits across from ambassadors, disputing old power structures with new promises of cooperation. He signs documents with India and 7 other nations, rooted in South-South cooperation. This was covered in the Business and Financial Times just last month, a real pivot away from old alliances and toward peer-level collaboration. But among all the signatories, India stands out not only for the scale of its global influence, but for the deep-rooted relationship it's built with Burkina Faso over decades. And that's where our story takes its real turn. Stay with me, because understanding what led to India brings us to a history few remember but all should. Flash back to the 1970s. Burkina Faso, then known as Upper Volta, and India began a slow dance of development. A delegation went to India in 1976, sparked by a protocol on economic and technical aid. In the 80s and 90s, heads of state from Sankara II visited India, solidifying bonds, programs launched, tractors, seeds, irrigation tools, agricultural training, initiatives worth millions in aid. They weren't headline grabs, they were seeds in the ground, waiting to sprout. Then came the 2000s Team 9 and Pan-African Network, credits for electrification, university equipment, rural infrastructure. Now fast forward to 2025, that foundation gave real, historical footing with India. And that brings us to the heart of what this new deal really means: not just a handshake, but decades of trust coming to life. India today isn't just a partner, it's a superpower with serious soft and hard power. It's operating out of a shared vision of development, not domination. India imports Burkina's gold and cotton, and the Indian community, even if small, runs real businesses across manufacturing, retail, pharmaceuticals. This isn't soft power, it's tangible economic exchange. So when signed this deal in June, it wasn't a symbolic gesture. It was India doubling down on decades of trust and leveraging it to diversify away from Western dependency. That matters especially when Burkina is distancing itself from old allies like France and forging real change in how it relates to the world. This isn't just about one country and one partner. These moves are part of a South-South cooperation wave: Africa, Asia, Latin America, building pathways between equals. He is not looking to replace one master with another, he's writing a new chapter. But there's more. Burkina, Mali, and Niger have formed the alliance of Sahel states, CES, pulling out of ECOWAS and drawing up their own rules with projects like a shared investment bank and a new flag. Together, these moves paint a picture: a country rejecting dependency, looking east and south, and turning historical ties into future power. And yet, what's really happening on the ground? Security, stability, all hanging in the balance. That's our next stop. Here's the paradox. Speaks revolution, sovereignty, Pan-African unity. Young people rally behind him as a symbol of defiance. And back home, in the heat of Ouagadougou, they chant "Long live Captain," while waving Russian and Burkina flags. But meanwhile, violence is spiraling. More than 60% of the country is now outside government control, with over 7,200 deaths and millions displaced. So you have a leader building alliances and being worshipped, even as chaos grows around him. That tension pulls you in, it demands You ask, can his diplomatic boldness end up rewriting history, or will his internal struggles drown the new era before it begins? That contrast is where the real drama unfolds. Isn't just talking abroad. At home, he's dissolving governments, reshuffling power, saying no more raw exports. He's ordering that 80% of raw material exports stop and embracing transformation. In December 2024, he sacked his prime minister, dissolved the national government, and then extended the transition period by 5 years. It's bold, arguably reckless, but it's a statement. Sweep away the old, build a new. Combined with the India agreements and AES alignment, his posture becomes clear. Outside and inside, it's about rewriting the rules. But again, real ambition or dangerously unstable foundation? That brings us full circle to what it all means. So let's pull back. In a world that said old alliances would guide Burkina Faso, here's signing deals with India, forming a Sahel alliance, dissolving governments, halting raw material exports. We've seen the promise and the peril, the global pivot and domestic flashpoints. Its history being written fast, messily, irreversibly. India isn't just a partner, it's a sign that new paths are possible for post-colonial nations. But promises of sovereignty don't come with guarantees. So we watch, wondering whether this real new deal will blossom or burn. Either way, it's worth every minute, because this is more than a story, it's an unfolding chapter in the redefining of power, alliance, and destiny. If it's real, if it's lasting, we're living it right now. But here's the thing, this story doesn't just stop at the handshake with India. What? Set in motion has ripple effects that stretch far beyond Burkina Faso's borders. Because when one leader takes a step that bold, others start to wonder, if he can do it, why can't we? Already, whispers are spreading across West Africa. Young activists in Ghana, Nigeria, and Senegal are watching. With curiosity and sometimes envy, his decision to pivot toward India and the South-South framework isn't just a foreign policy choice. It is a symbolic statement that African states don't need to stay tethered to the same old playbook, and history shows that symbols often matter as much as reality. Think back to the non-aligned movement during the Cold War, leaders like Nkrumah, Nasser, and Nehru imagining a third path. That dream fizzled out for decades. But now, with India ascending and Africa's youth demanding sovereignty, the spark is reigniting, and here's where the loop opens. If E's gamble with India pays off, other African states could follow suit, realigning their economies toward Asia instead of Europe. But if it fails, it could confirm skeptics' worst fears that sovereignty talk is nothing more than rhetoric. But let's flip the lens for a moment. Why is India so invested in this? Simple, because India is in its own fight for influence. In a world where China has already poured billions into African roads, railways, and ports, India can't afford to sit back. By re-energizing old ties with countries like Burkina Faso, India positions itself as a partner that doesn't just bring money, but also solidarity. It wants to be remembered not as a new colonizer, but as a friend who stood shoulder to shoulder when the West turned its back. And here's the twist, India is also chasing resources. Burkina Faso has gold, cotton, and agricultural potential. It also sits in a strategic region at the heart of the Sahel. So this partnership isn't charity. It's mutual need dressed in the language of solidarity, which makes you wonder, can this really stay balanced, or will old patterns of dependence creep back in? We'll circle back to that question later. One thing is certain. As biggest supporters aren't diplomats, they raise the youth of Burkina Faso. In a country where the median age is under 18, young people see in him someone who broke the mold. He's not a polished career politician. He's a soldier who rose from the barracks, overthrew a government, and started rewriting the rules. This matters because youth across Africa are restless. They're tired of promises, tired of watching resources leave their lands without benefit. When they sit across from Indian envoys and sign real agreements that could bring scholarships, tech, and energy infrastructure, they feel like their voices are finally echoing through the halls of power. But here's the tension: the same youth that cheer him now will hold him accountable tomorrow. If promises of new schools, jobs, and roads don't materialize, that adoration could flip into disillusionment, and in a country already facing insurgency, the stakes couldn't be higher. Zoom out again, and you'll notice something fascinating. This deal is being watched not only in Africa and India, but also in Washington, Paris, Beijing, and Moscow to the west. E's pivot looks like another rejection, one more African nation saying we're done with you. To China, it's competition proof that India can make inroads in regions once considered Beijing's backyard. And to Russia, it's both opportunity and challenge Moscow has wooed heavily, but now India is also stepping into the frame. This isn't just South-South cooperation, it's a new piece on the global chessboard, where small states wield unexpected leverage by playing bigger powers against one another. Whether intentionally or not, has made Burkina Faso impossible to ignore. So where does that leave us? Right here, in the messy, uncertain middle. On paper, the deal with India is real, tangible, and historic. In practice, its success depends on execution, how fast projects roll out, how many scholarships reach students, how much electricity lights up rural villages. Success will breed momentum, drawing in more partners. Failure will harden cynicism, feeding the narrative that Africa's sovereignty is just a dream deferred. What we're witnessing is more than just contracts signed in a conference hall, it's the testing of a theory. Can South-South alliances truly reshape the balance of power, or will they collapse under the weight of history and hardship? And that's where the story lingers. Because the answer hasn't been written yet, it's being written right now in real time, and if you blink, you might just miss the moment when a country once dismissed as powerless helps redraw the map of global politics.